Welcome to this covenant presentation for August. This year we have been looking at people or events in Father's life that can be seen as a message from God, or in the words of our motto for this year, be a letter of recommendation from God for us. This month I want to focus on one of the first Schoenstatt sisters who came to Australia, Sister Bonitas, and how her life can be seen as a letter of recommendation for us. I want to place this presentation under the theme, Where there is love and Bonitas, there is God. And why? Because these words were written on a picture given to Sister Bonitas by Father Kentenich, and I believe that they exemplified the way she lived her life. Sister Bonitas had a great, simple and practical belief in divine providence. Her favourite saying was, "Everything is mapped out in God's plan." As a genuine child of the Father, she followed in loyalty the guidance of divine providence and served the plans of the Heavenly Father in selfless motherliness. Although she was only in this country for a short time, through her offering of her life, she helped lay the foundation of Schoenstatt here in Australia. However, we need to start at the beginning. Maria Opper was born on the 2nd of November, All Souls Day, in 1912 in Putzbach, Germany. She was a happy child, deeply rooted in her faith. Her parents were devout Catholics, and Maria grew up healthy and happy in body and soul. Her pleasant nature made her popular. She loved singing, dancing and hiking, and it was said that wherever Maria was, there was laughter and fun. Maria first went to Schoenstatt in 1928, but it was not until 3 years later that she was there again. During this next visit, she made up her mind to give her life entirely and forever to the Mother Thrice Admirable and Queen of Schoenstatt and her work. However, it was a further 9 years in 1937 before Maria began her postulancy in Oppingen. She chose Bonitas as her name. "I would like to express kindness in my name. Kindness is what the world needs," she explained to someone who asked why she had chosen that name. After the novitiate, Sister Bonitas was sent to Koblenz to be trained as a nurse. During the war, she was superior in a military hospital and then later superior at an old people's home. There were two trends clearly apparent in her life: the love of the cross and her warm, tender love for Mary, the Heavenly Mother. It was her striving to be like Mary and her love for Mary which made Sister Bonitas such a warm, friendly, harmonious person. It was this deep love for Mary and the cross which formed her life and gave her a deep understanding for human weakness and a genuine apostolic spirit. In 1950, the Palatine Fathers made a request to the Sisters' House in Schoenstatt for sisters for their mission station for Aboriginal children in Tarden in Western Australia. While there were many human reasons which would appear to be against a new beginning at that time, Father Kentenich saw the invitation as an open door to bring Schoenstatt's message to another continent. He asked Sister Bonitas if she would be ready to go to Australia. As a young sister, she had once volunteered to go to a mission country, and it had not been youthful enthusiasm which urged her to do so, but rather the urge to live according to her course motto, totum pro toto, all for all. However, she found even a train trip from Koblenz to Wallander, which is a very short distance, rather unbearable, and so the thought of a sea voyage for several weeks made her worried. However, Sister Bonitas said yes, although she was concerned about her health. She felt that in some ways her strength had diminished. It would be sad indeed, she thought, if she were only here for a short time, and then the sisters would have to find someone to replace her. However, a medical examination proved satisfactory, and so she wrote. Of course, I said yes. Do you know how I see this request? Everything we have must be given as a sacrifice. We must give all to God for the work of Our Lady. In 1939, I really offered my life. Now, with that same love? No, with a much greater love and readiness, I repeat the offer. I know this is not enough. A new Schoenstatt must grow in Australia, and for that you would need people full of courage, strength and initiative, and I haven't much of that. Will Our Lady use me in spite of this? Will she do work for me that I'm not able to do? You must understand that I do not want to draw back. I only want to say I don't have the abilities which are needed. In the depth of my heart, I am quite happy that God has called me. Surely He wants to detach me from people and things. He wants to make me totally available for Him. And so, on the 8th of March 1951, Sister Bonitas, along with Sister Magdalene, Sister Annunciata, who we knew as Sister Anita, and Sister Agides, said their farewells and travelled by train to Genoa, where they boarded a ship for Australia. On the 11th of April that year, the sisters began their work at the Palatine Mission Station in Tarden, where at that time there were 80 Aboriginal children to be cared for and educated. The mission station, which had been established a few years earlier, was very primitive in its setup. The heat, the flies, the unknown culture, the ways of thinking of the Aborigines, and the difficulties with the language were all opportunities for the sisters to make contributions to the capital of grace. The striving of the sisters was all for Schoenstatt in Australia, for Father's mission. As well as being the superior, Sister Bonitas looked after the laundry, the sewing room, the chapel, as well as many other things. She soon became a good friend of all the children. They loved her because they found in her a kind and motherly love. Tarden is not blessed with extraordinary beauty, but Sister Bonitas saw and experienced the Creator and His creation in a special way. She wrote, "Sunrise and sunset are still more glorious than at sea. At eventime, it is as if we could touch the starry sky, and all is so still. Perth is hundreds of miles away. It is an extraordinary experience to be in the desert, so far away from the hustle and bustle of the city, completely one with God." In those early days in Tarden, Sister Bonitas also wrote, "Now we are here in a new country. We have to build the realm of our Mother and Queen. She must be glorified. The Marian kingdom of the Father must grow, even if we die. We will give everything to our Mother and Queen. We will sacrifice ourselves for the kingdom in Australia." Although the sisters were filled with deep mission consciousness, they were fully aware that if the Schoenstatt kingdom was to blossom one day and the fruit to ripen, there had to be grains of wheat which had to fall and grow into the ground and die. They also realized that in the loneliness of Tarden, it would be not possible to build a shrine. However, they decided to build spiritually so that the Mother of God would be able to glorify herself. The sisters decided to spiritually build the foundation of the shrine by emphasizing the 4 cornerstones on which Schoenstatt is based. As they were just 4 sisters, each one was to be responsible for one spiritual cornerstone. These were a firm belief in divine providence, a deep, great love for Mary, the Inscriptio Spirit, which is the total gift of self, by embracing in advance all the crosses and suffering that God has foreseen for me in my life, and fourthly, Schoenstatt's mission consciousness. The sisters drew lots to see which each one would represent, and with these, the basis was laid for the future of Schoenstatt in Australia. These cornerstones inspired the sisters' striving long after the death of Sister Bonitas. Early in 1952, the sisters heard the good news that the Palatine Fathers were planning to build an MTA shrine in Kew in Melbourne. This was a great joy for the sisters, as Sister Bonitas had brought the plans for the shrine along with her from Schoenstatt. These she offered to the Fathers, but to the great disappointment of the sisters, they heard that the shrine would not be built according to the plans of the original shrine, as this building style would not be suitable in surroundings such as in Kew, because, as they put it, for cultural reasons. This news was very hard for the sisters, and Sister Bonitas in turn offered her life for the shrine and a genuine Schoenstatt here in Australia. It was on the very day the shrine in Kew was blessed, the 11th of May 1952, that Sister Bonitas took sick. Visits to doctors and hospitalizations followed. Then finally came the verdict: cancer. Sister Bonitas took it calmly. Now came a time of intense suffering, a suffering that was endured willingly and joyfully for Father Kentenich, for the sisters' family, especially here in Australia, and for the growth of the Schoenstatt movement in Australia. Sister Bonitas said to Sister Agides during these days, "When I said goodbye in Schoenstatt, I knew this was the sacrifice of my life. I felt that I couldn't live much longer, but I asked God to give me one more year so we could settle here. Well, now God can have me." Despite all her sufferings and pain, she repeated again and again, "If it is in accordance with your plans, let me be a sacrifice." God accepted the sacrifice of Sister Bonitas, and she died on the 31st of August 1952. She was buried in the cemetery in Fremantle. However, with the establishment of the cemetery for the sisters at Mount Schoenstatt, it was decided on the 25th anniversary of the death of Sister Bonitas to transfer her remains from Fremantle to Mount Schoenstatt, so she could rest near the shrine for which she offered her life. This occurred on the 2nd of June 1978, when a holy mass took place in the shrine, followed by the burial. One of those first sisters said, "When we discussed our future, Sister Bonitas used to say, 'Everything lies in God's plan.' Sister Bonitas was the child with deep faith in divine providence, and therefore I can imagine she was not worrying too much about the things to come. Looking into the future must have rooted her still deeper in God and our dear Blessed Mother. Mater habebit curam. Mother will take care. An atmosphere of peace and goodness radiated from her. Another sister said, Sister Bonitas had chosen her name because she wanted to be what the name says. She really tried to live it. Where there is love and Bonitas, there is God. We owe a great debt to these first 4 sisters who came to Australia. Sister Bonitas gave herself for Schoenstatt in Australia. In looking at her life, we can recognise the deep loyalty she had for Father Kentenich and her willingness to be a sacrifice for Schoenstatt. Sister Bonitas can indeed be seen as a letter of recommendation from God to us. Can we accept the challenge to be like Sister Bonitas, to be authentic witnesses to God through the way we live our lives? Can we, through our life and our love for our Blessed Mother, offer our contributions to the capital of grace to ensure that our shrines remain powerhouses of God's grace for all those who come after us? Our Lady challenges each one of us. Prove first by your deeds that you really love me. Where there is love and Bonitas, there is God. Can the same be said of us? There are a number of questions which you might like to look at. The first is, what stood out for you in the life of Sister Bonitas and why? Sister Bonitas offered her life for the shrine and for a genuine Schoenstatt here in Australia. What can we do, either individually or as a family, to see that Schoenstatt's mission continues to grow in the spirit of our Father? Our Lady challenges each one of us to prove first by your deeds that you really love me. How can we ensure that our shrines become powerhouses of God's grace for all those who come after us? And lastly, how can the life of Sister Bonitas be a letter of recommendation from God to us? And what can we learn from her? Thank you.